Welcome back, guys. Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family also. Can you please tell me from where you're watching? Thanks. By Eli, Maple Hollow, 2023. This happened not too long ago, just a few months back. And honestly, I still think about it way too much. I live in a small, quiet town called Maple Hollow. It's the kind of place where folks wave when they pass you, and you can leave your door unlocked without worrying. At least that's what I thought. I work the night shift at a packaging warehouse out on the edge of town. It's boring, sure, but it pays the bills. Since I'm up all night for work, I sleep during the day and stay on that schedule even on my nights off. It's just easier that way. One night, I finished my shift around 4 a.m. and started the usual drive home. The roads were empty, no surprise there. Maple Hollow pretty much went to sleep. By 10 p.m., I pulled into my street and saw something weird right away. A car I didn't recognize parked almost directly in front of my driveway. It was an old black sedan, which looked like something from the early 2000s. The windows were pitch black, like not even a sliver of light got through. All the lights were off and it was just sitting there. I slowed down as I passed it, feeling that weird little twist in my gut. You know the one. I tried to peek inside, but I couldn't see anything. Just my reflection in the window. I turned into my garage and parked. I gave one last glance toward the street before heading in. The car didn't move, it just sat there like it was waiting. Now our neighborhood isn't packed. Houses are spaced out with lots of street parking, and it's rare to see someone park right up against someone else's driveway unless they're visiting. Still, I figured maybe someone was visiting the neighbors, maybe even crashed overnight after a party or something. I went to bed and forgot about it. Later that night, well, technically the next morning, I checked out the window again just to see. The car was gone. Poof, just like that. The next day was business as usual. I slept through most of the afternoon, got up around 6 p.m., and got ready for another shift. As I backed out of my driveway, I noticed the car wasn't there. No big deal. I didn't think much of it, but when I got home around 4:15 a.m., there it was again. Same car, same exact spot. This time, I crept past it a little slower, hoping to see something through the windows. Still nothing. The same heavy tint, same quiet, eerie stillness. I parked in the garage, but something was bugging me, so I walked to the edge of the driveway to get a better look. As I got closer, maybe 10 feet away, I thought I saw something shift inside. Just a flicker of movement, like someone turning their head real fast. But it was faint and happened in the corner of my eye. Could have been a reflection, maybe even just my imagination. Still, I didn't want to get too close. Instead, I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the license plate. Just in case. When I checked again an hour later, the car was gone. Like before, like it was never there. At this point, I started feeling uneasy. It's hard to explain. The car wasn't doing anything. It didn't follow me or block my path or even turn its lights on. But the way it kept showing up only when I got home in the dead of night, it felt personal. The next night was my night off, so I didn't have to work. I slept in, woke up around 7 p.m., and decided to take one of my usual long walks around the neighborhood. It was cold out, early spring chill in the air, but I liked it that way. Clears my head. I walked the whole loop around Maple Hollow, maybe past one or two other parked cars along the way, but nothing out of the ordinary. Then, I turned onto my street and there it was again, that same black sedan, parked in the exact same spot, right next to my driveway. Only now I knew it hadn't been there when I left. I walked right up to it this time. I pressed my face against the driver's window, cupped my hands to block out the glare, and looked inside. It was empty. No people. No bags. No trash. Nothing to hint at who it belonged to or why it kept showing up. I stood there for a minute, trying to make sense of it, then finally went inside. I tossed my coat over the chair, walked upstairs, and reached for my phone. I had left it charging on my nightstand while I was out. That's when I saw the alert. Motion detected, it said. From my front porch camera. Timestamp, about 30 minutes. Now I've got 4 cameras. One at the front door, one in the kitchen, one in the living room, and one in my bedroom, each set to record when there's movement. The alert didn't say which one picked it up, so I opened the app and clicked. Through the footage, at first, nothing. Just still, empty rooms. Then I got to the bedroom clip. For almost the entire 60 seconds, the room was completely quiet. Just the faint sound of the house settling. I was about to write it off when in the last 5 seconds I saw something. A figure moved past the very bottom edge of the camera. Quick. Just a blur of hair and shoulder, gone in a blink. I froze. That clip was from this room. The room I was standing in right then. I didn't move. Couldn't move. I felt this ice-cold feeling crawl up my spine. My hands started tingling, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Someone had been in my house. I turned around slowly, scanning every shadow, every corner. I didn't hear anything, but that didn't help. The silence made it worse. It felt too quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. And then I heard it. Movement. Behind me. A footstep, quick and heavy, like someone stepping off a rug, onto the floor. I bolted. I ran out of the bedroom and down the hall. As I hit the stairs, I heard footsteps thundering right behind me. Fast, close, maybe 10 feet away. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just charged through the front door and sprinted into the woods behind my house. Branches whipped past my arms. I tripped once, nearly fell, but I kept going until the only sound I could hear was my own gasping breath and the crunch of dead leaves under my shoes. When I finally stopped, I was deep in the trees, hidden in the dark. I pulled out my phone and called 911 with shaking fingers. The police showed up 20 minutes later, but the car? Gone. Luckily, I still had the photo of the plate. That helped. They found him 3 hours later, not far from town. A guy in his mid-20s. Looked completely unhinged. Clothes torn, hair a mess, eyes wide like he hadn't slept in days. Inside his car, they found photos, pictures of my house, pictures of me, through the windows, sitting on the couch, brushing my teeth, even sleeping. He had a notebook too. Inside were pages of notes, what time I left for work, when I got home, even what I wore some days. He'd been watching me for at least 2 weeks. What's even more terrifying, we still don't know how he got into my house. None of the doors or windows were broken. He somehow made it around all the cameras except for that one moment in the bedroom. Just a flicker of movement that finally gave him away. For all I know, it wasn't his first time inside. Maybe he'd been there before, lurking in the dark. Maybe I'd walked right past him, never knowing he was there. I try not to think about that too much. He's locked up now. But sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, and check all the rooms just to be sure. Maple Hollow doesn't feel so quiet anymore. Have you ever had something happen that just sticks with you for years? Not in a good way. I mean the kind of memory that creeps in when you're driving alone at night or lying in bed staring at the ceiling. That's what this story is for me. It happened back in 2019. I was 22, working nights as a rideshare driver in a small town called Elmsbrook, just outside of Portland. My name's Jesse, by the way. I was living with my cousin Max back then. He was going to community college, and we shared a tiny apartment with paper-thin walls and a broken heater. Money was tight, so I picked up extra shifts driving for Quick Ride, which was basically the knockoff Uber for our area. One Friday night in late October, the weather was awful. I mean, really bad. It had been raining all day, but around 9 p.m. the wind picked up and the power started flickering in parts of town. Trees were bending. Leaves and trash were flying everywhere. That kind of storm makes you want to stay inside and curl up under a blanket, right? Not me. I was out in my beat-up 2006 Honda Civic, praying someone would need a ride so I could afford next month's internet bill. Nothing came in for the first hour. I parked behind a shuttered strip mall and watched videos on my phone, half hoping the app would die, half hoping it wouldn't because honestly the storm made driving feel a little dangerous. But boredom and bills are a strong combo. At around 10:30 p.m. the notification came through. Pickup. Sawyer. Location. Pine Hollow Road. Now if you're not from around here you might not know Pine Hollow. It's a stretch of country road that goes through thick forest. No lights, no houses, no gas stations, just trees and shadows and the occasional deer jumping in front of your car. The app said the guy was 30 minutes away from me, and his drop-off point was another 20 minutes past that. Normally I'd pass, but like I said, money was tight, and weirdly, I didn't have a single other driver pinging near me. I figured I was the only one dumb enough to be working in that mess. I accepted the ride and started driving. The roads were slick and shiny, reflecting the headlights like a mirror. I had to swerve to avoid a few fallen branches. My wipers were doing their best, but the rain was coming down so hard it was like someone was dumping buckets on the windshield. I turned off the radio after a while. Didn't want any distractions. About 25 minutes in, my GPS started acting weird. The little blue arrow froze, then jumped ahead, then froze again. Great. I was almost at the location, so I just kept going, hoping I didn't pass him. Finally, I reached the pin, right at a fork in the road where Pine Hollow splits into Deer Trail and Old Hollow Way. I pulled over, squinting through the storm, but there was no one in sight. Not a single car, no lights, just trees, rain, and that weird kind of quiet where the wind makes everything feel like it's moving around you. I grabbed my phone to message him when something in the side mirror caught my eye. There was a man standing directly behind my car. I never heard him approach. He just appeared. He was tall, maybe 6'3", thin, wearing a soaking wet hoodie with the hood pulled tight over his face. His jeans were dark and heavy with water, and he wasn't carrying an umbrella or anything. Just standing there like the rain didn't matter. Then without a word, he opened the back door and got in. Sawyer? I asked. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me through the rearview mirror. His face was pale, eyes dark and sunken like he hadn't slept in days. Finally, he said my name, Jesse, and that was enough for me to start driving. We went maybe 5 minutes in silence before I started feeling off. You know how sometimes you just feel someone watching you? That's what it was. He was sitting dead center in the back seat, not off to the side like most people do. Every time I glanced in the mirror, he was right there, staring forward. Not at the window. At me. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the road, but the rain made it tough. My hands were sweaty on the wheel, my heart was beating a little faster than normal. I felt like I was being followed, but by the guy in my own car. Eventually I asked, "So, what brings you out here tonight? Not the best weather for a walk?" He didn't answer, not even a shrug. He looked like he might say something. Opened. His mouth a little, but then just turned his head and stared out the window. That silence. It was loud. It felt like the car was shrinking, like the air was getting thinner. Then he started shifting in his seat, leaning forward, looking around. And all the while he kept glancing up at the rearview mirror, locking eyes with me every few seconds. It felt like a test, like he was watching to see if I was nervous. Spoiler, I was. Then, in a flat, low voice, he said, "Pull over." Just like that. No explanation. No, please. Just an order. I looked around. We were still surrounded by forest, no buildings, no lights, no reason to stop. "You sure?" I asked. "Pull over," he repeated, sharper this time. I didn't argue. I pulled to the side slowly, my brain racing. He moved like he was about to get out, then stopped. He was staring at my phone on the center console, the one still open on the Quick Ride app. It had his name, pickup location, and the route. That's when I saw it happen in his face. That moment of realization, like a switch flipped. His hand hovered over the door handle, but he didn't move. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. Checked something. Then looked at me again. Our eyes met in the mirror and I could see what he was thinking. I knew right then. Something was wrong. He was about to do something. Something bad. And now he was second-guessing it, realizing I had a record of everything, his name, our location, the time. If I disappeared, the app would lead them right to him. "Hey," I said quickly, trying to sound casual. "Don't worry about the fare. I'll cancel it at the end. You won't get charged." He didn't say anything, but his jaw tightened. Then, after a long pause, he opened the door and stepped out into the storm. He didn't look back. Within seconds, the rain and fog swallowed him up. It was like he was never there. I hit the gas and got the hell out of there. I didn't sleep that night. I drove straight home, locked the doors, and sat in my car for 10 minutes before going inside. I told Max everything, and he looked freaked out too. He told me to call the cops, just in case, so I did. They took a report, said they'd look into it, but I figured that would be the end of it. 3 days later, they called me back. A woman had gone missing the same night I picked up Sawyer. Last seen walking near Deer Trail Road, about a half-mile from that weird pickup location. Her name was Lily Hart. She was 27, a teacher. They wanted to know everything I remembered about the man I picked up, down to what he was wearing, how he spoke, if he had any strange behavior. I told them everything. Every weird look. Every second of silence. Every glance in the mirror. But they never found Lily. And they never found Sawyer either. It was like both of them had just disappeared into the woods. To this day, I still don't know who that guy really was or what he had planned. But I can't stop thinking about what would have happened if he hadn't seen my phone. If he hadn't realized he could be traced. I was the last person to see him. And maybe, just maybe, I was almost his second victim. Don't drive for Quick Ride anymore. It was a Thursday evening in the spring of 2019. Just one of those gray, rainy days that makes everything feel slower and heavier. My name's Caleb, and back then, I was 24, living out in the quieter end of Ridgeway Hollow, Kentucky. It's one of those tiny towns you drive through without realizing you've already left it. My place was tucked back in the woods a good ways off the main road. Just me, a beat-up pickup, and a rented little house that always creaked too much at night. That day I'd just finished a long shift working maintenance for the county. Part indoor, part outdoor, so when it rained, it was the worst of both worlds. Mud in your boots, soaked clothes, and a whole lot of wishing you were anywhere else. By the time I clocked out at 6, I was dead tired and soggy down to my socks. The drive home took about 30 minutes through sheets of rain and misty windows. All I wanted was dry clothes, some leftover pizza, and to not move for a few hours. As I turned off the main road onto my driveway, which was basically a river of mud at this point, I noticed something weird. There were tire tracks in the mud that weren't mine, deep, fresh ones like someone had pulled up to the house, turned around and driven off. I figured maybe the postal truck had come by, even though they never used the driveway unless it was a package. But when I got to the porch, there was nothing. No mail, no packages, no missed delivery notes. Just rain, puddles, and quiet. Still, I didn't think much of it. People take wrong turns all the time out here. I went inside, peeled off my wet clothes, tossed on a hoodie and sweats, and microwaved some pizza. It was about 7:30 when I finally settled in on the couch in the living room, scrolling through my phone while some background TV played. That's when I heard a knock. Well, maybe a knock. It was faint, just one. Could have been the house creaking or something falling outside, but it sounded like it came from the front door. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. The rain was still pounding on the roof and windows, which didn't help. Curiosity got the better of me, so I stood up and made my way to the door. As soon as I cracked it open, a cold gust of wind and rain smacked me in the face. But there was no one there, no car, no movement, just the woods and that steady curtain of rain. Weird, but whatever. I shut the door and went back to the couch. An hour passed. Maybe more. The TV show wasn't even holding my attention anymore. I was just about to get up and head to the bathroom when something caught my eye. Right behind the couch on the white tile floor, there was a muddy smudge. Like someone had stepped there. But I hadn't walked that way, and I definitely hadn't worn shoes inside. Especially not the muddy boots I'd kicked off in the entryway. I walked over and stared at it for a while. Just a single dirty mark. No footprints leading in or out. I grabbed a rag from the kitchen and wiped it up. But I couldn't shake this weird little twist in my stomach. You know when something just doesn't sit right? That was me. I kept trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I had stepped there without realizing. Maybe it was from earlier. But that didn't make sense. The spot was behind the couch, right in the blind spot of the room. The more I thought about it, the more my nerves got jumpy. I started looking over my shoulder. Every creak of the house felt louder. The living room had this wide-open layout, and the couch faced the TV with the whole downstairs behind me. It felt exposed, like I was waiting for something to creep up from behind. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned off the TV, grabbed my phone, and headed upstairs to my bedroom. It's not like I was panicking. I just felt better, being in a room with a door that locked. Plus, my bed's up against the wall, and there's something comforting about that when you're on edge. I turned on the small TV in there and tried to chill out. For a while, it worked. Maybe 20 minutes passed. I was just getting lost in some old sitcom when I heard it. A dull thump. Not loud, not sharp, just a sound. From outside my bedroom door, it could have been the house settling, or something falling, but it sounded more like a step, or maybe a hand brushing against the wall. My body tensed up immediately. My heart started thudding in my ears. I muted the TV and listened. Silence. I stood up and walked over to the door. Slowly, I put my ear against it. Still nothing. I stood there debating whether to open it. Something in me said, "Don't." But something else, the part of me that needed to know, won out. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. Still. Nothing but the faint hum of the rain outside and the soft flicker of my nightlight in the bathroom across the hall. But something felt wrong. The air felt heavier, like someone had just walked through. I slowly stepped out into the hall and walked toward the spare room. It was just a little library/office that hardly got used, but I figured I'd check it anyway. Right as I reached the door, the TV downstairs turned on, full blast, the same show I had been watching earlier. My heart practically exploded. I froze for a second, then sprinted down the hall, bounding down the stairs 3 steps at a time. The living room was lit only by the TV. Its screen flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. The rest of the house was pitch black. I crept into the room, scanning every corner, every shadow. No one was there. I went over to the TV and hit the button on the back to turn it off. The second the sound stopped, the house felt deathly quiet. I stood there breathing hard, staring at my reflection in the blank screen. Something wasn't right. I went to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I had, and started checking the house. Room by room, closet by closet, under every bed. I checked the back door, the windows, everything. Nothing. No broken locks. No signs of forced entry. Just that muddy mark from earlier still lingering in my mind. I should have called the police. But part of me didn't want to sound crazy. And another part of me thought, what if they're still in here? And I'm just walking around like bait? I went back upstairs, shaking but trying to think clearly. There was just one room I hadn't checked yet. The spare room. I slowly opened the door. The smell of old books hit me. Everything looked the same. Shelves, desk, stacked boxes. But on the floor, right in front of the closet, was the remote for the living room TV. I hadn't brought it up. I hadn't even moved it. My blood ran cold. I backed away slowly, then turned and bolted down the stairs, out the front door and into the rain. I called the cops right then and there. When they arrived, they searched everything again. This time they found a broken window lock behind the old curtain in the laundry room. It was barely noticeable. You had to look for it. Their theory? Whoever it was had come earlier in the day. Maybe they were the ones who left the tire tracks. They probably knocked to see if anyone was home. When no one answered, they left, then came back later to break in. They'd been inside the whole night, hiding, watching, moving silently from room to room while I sat there, completely unaware. The TV? Probably a distraction. A trick to pull me downstairs so they could slip out while I was looking the other way. And the creepiest part? Nothing was taken. Not a single thing. No drawers rifled through, no electronics gone. Just presents like they weren't there to steal. They were there to be there. I still don't know what they wanted, or if they ever came back. But I moved out 3 weeks later. I couldn't sleep. Another night in that place. Every time I hear a knock now, just one knock, I still get chills. And sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't gone upstairs?